Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 17 running back rankings. So on today's episode, I'm going to be going over the Week 17 running back rankings and how I see it's going to stack up as we enter the final week of the fantasy football season. For many of us, the season's already over, but for those of you who are still playing in Week 17, I thought I might as well bring out some rankings in order to help you guys capture some fantasy championships if, in fact, you are in your championship week. So today's episode will consist of the usual. We're going to be going over the matchups at the running back position, talking about who's got the best and worst matchups. Then after that, I'm going to be talking about potential running backs who may not be playing this week, due to the fact that teams are just honestly trying to preserve them for next season, trying to avoid any injury risk, and or running backs who are going to be playing in the playoffs and their teams have already clinched a bye week. After that, I'm going to be going over my 1 through 36 running back rankings as usual, and that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, so if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, we're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. Probably won't be able to get there within the next week, but so be it. 4,800 of you who have generously, stuck around, been a part of this community for the last 4 months or so. Whether you've been here for a week or whether you've been here since, the first couple of weeks, thank you for being here. And let's talk some fantasy football, shall we? All right, so matchups for Week 17. This is going to be a fairly shorter video because my throat's been bothering me, so I don't really want to talk for too long. So let's see how fast we can get through this. All right, the best matchup for running backs as of right now is playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. This week, we know the Cincinnati Bengals will be facing the Steelers. Now, we have no really decisive word on whether or not James Conner will be playing this week. All we know is that Jaylen Samuels has been playing well in the last couple weeks, and most likely he's going to be the starter. I know that the Pittsburgh Steelers are trying to get into the playoffs, but as of right now, we're just going to stick with Jaylen Samuels being the starter of that team, and he should have a good week playing against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are giving up the most points to the running back position in half-point PPR. So he's got the best matchup, and I expect him to play well. The next team with the worst run defense in the NFL when it comes to the fantasy standpoint is the Kansas City Chiefs. They got absolutely torched this past week by Chris Carson and the Seattle Seahawks. Chris Carson had 100-plus rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and really put on a clinic against that defense. The team playing against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City this week will be the Oakland Raiders, in which Doug Martin is coming off himself a 100-yard rushing game against the Denver Broncos on Monday night. So Doug Martin, yes, he's probably not a very viable running back option, but he's got the matchup. He's coming off of a great week, and potentially the Raiders could play an upset special. The last time the Raiders played against the Kansas City Chiefs was about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken, and they scored 30 points, and it was a competitive game. So there's a potential that Doug Martin could end up doing some damage this week. Moving on, the Arizona Cardinals, they get to play against the Seattle Seahawks. Like I mentioned yesterday, I said that the Seattle Seahawks may not be playing their starters. Information came out a little bit earlier today that Pete Carroll said that they are playing all their starters. They don't believe in holding back their starters due to the fact that they've already made the playoffs. So assuming that, I think Chris Carson, if in fact he is going to be playing and he's going to get the full workload, he's going to destroy the Cardinals defense, and they're going to run right through that team. So anyway, Chris Carson, Rashaad Penny, those kind of guys can really do some damage this week. All right, moving on, the Atlanta Falcons giving up the 4th most points. That's pretty much just Payton Barber. I know Ja'Quiz Rodgers has been getting some value through the passing game. He vultured a touchdown on the goal line earlier last week against the Cowboys. And that being said, I still think Payton Barber is a viable option. He's probably, with all the running backs that won't be playing this week, he's probably a top 24 running back. And I have some confidence in him going into this week. Number 5, playing against the Miami Dolphins, will be, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Buffalo Bills. Now, last week, the Buffalo Bills, LaShawn McCoy played, but did nothing. He literally ran the ball 6 times for 9 yards. I really just don't trust any running backs out of that backfield. I know it's a really good matchup against the Dolphins. That all being said, I really don't trust it. So I think there can be more damage done than you getting something out of playing a Bills running back this week. So I'd probably advise staying away from said running backs. Got my throat. Hold up. Give me a moment, guys. Okay, so moving on. Let's see here. We're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now. Like I mentioned yesterday, also Tevin Coleman did sustain an injury this past week. As right now, he's considered as questionable. They technically don't have to play him. And if they don't decide to do so, with Devontae Freeman out and a couple weeks back, Ito Smith went down with an injury. The only other running back on the roster that is healthy is Brian Hill. So Brian Hill will be mentioned on today's episode in our rankings, and he could have a good week against Tampa Bay's terrible run defense and terrible defense as a whole. The New York Giants giving up the 7th most points to the running back position, nearly giving up 100 yards. I mean, literally, they're averaging giving up 100 yards a game to the running back position. But this coming week, they play against the Cowboys. Now, according to Jerry Jones, even though they have clinched a spot, they are going to play their offense and their starters at a limited basis. So what I expect to see this week from the Dallas Cowboys is I expect to see a little bit of a preseason mentality. They're going to have probably Ezekiel, Elliott, Dak Prescott, and Amari Cooper, and the starting offensive line play for maybe give or take the first quarter, maybe half of the first quarter, maybe just one drive, and then they're done. And then Rod Smith's going to come in, and maybe Rod Smith has a good game. Maybe he ends up being garbage. You never know, especially when you're going to have to deal with a backup offensive line of the Cowboys and the New York Giants trying to pick up a win for Eli, who potentially this could be his last game as a starting quarterback of the Giants. Potentially. We never know, though. Moving on, the Buffalo Bills, giving up some points to the running back position. They get to play against the Dolphins. And to be honest, from what we saw from the Dolphins last week, it's exactly what I thought would happen. Adam Gase really just doesn't have an understanding on how to run the ball. Really just, it's mind-boggling how you could have Kenyan Drake and Frank Gores and Brandon Boldens and Kalen Ballages in your backfield and still inconsistently run the ball and spread the ball out in the backfield according to the talent. We only saw Kenyan Drake touch the ball out of the backfield, running the ball, 6 times this past week? And really there's just not a lot of consistency in that backfield. So unless you're going to bank on the idea that they're going to catch the ball and have some sort of contribution in the passing game, I really wouldn't look at the backfield of the Dolphins as having too much value. But Kenyan Drake could figure it out this week. Moving on, we have the Oakland Raiders. Great. Damien Williams is going to have a fantastic week. You'll see it from my rankings. He's just been on fire. To be honest, who's Spencer Ware? Who's Kareem Hunt? Damien Williams is, as advertised, broke 100 yards rushing this past week, has scored touchdowns in each of the last 2 games, and really, I mean, even in the passing game, has looked really good for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's another great play this week. The number 10, the team giving up the 10th most points to the running back position on a weekly basis, it is the Cleveland Browns. They get to play against the Ravens this week, and if you go ahead and you play in the, if you play towards where I don't know what I'm trying to say, but what I'm really trying to say is if you end up allowing the Ravens to play their game, which is run the ball the entire time, try to keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands as much as possible, force your defense off of the field, and have long offensive drives, you're going to struggle, right? Especially Baker Mayfield, not prone to making mistakes here or there. As of right now, the way I see it, Gus Edwards, Kenneth Dixon could both have good weeks. Obviously, this past week was a little bit of a struggle, but still potentially could have themselves a decent week against a defense that, as of right now, yes, they like to blitz, but if they end up getting caught in the wrong direction, Gus Edwards could break one out. Moving on, San Francisco 49ers, I expect C.J. Anderson to tear them apart. Looked good within this offense last week and should be great going forward. The Los Angeles Chargers playing against Royce Freeman, a guy I did not mention yesterday, completely went over my head. Phillip Lindsay is out for the season, so the backup running back out of Oregon is a rookie, Royce Freeman. I mentioned him a lot in this preseason. Never really came to fruition since Philip Lindsay won that job. So this week he will be contributing and playing against the Chargers defense. Against the Lions, we have the Packers, and Jamaal Williams looked great this last week, had 95 yards rushing, contributed in the passing game, had a rushing touchdown, looked great himself. The Seattle Seahawks play against the Cardinals. Maybe David Johnson could figure it out. I'm hoping he does so. He struggled against the Rams last week, which was, wasn't really a surprise considering all you have to do against the Cardinals is blitz and, try to force as much pressure onto Josh Rosen in that offensive line as possible, and you're going to be successful against them. The Eagles also giving up some points to the running back. Adrian Peterson broke 1,000 yards rushing. I think he's one of the 7 running backs thus far this season who has broken the 1,000 rushing yard mark, which is incredible at his age. He's insane. He really is insane. He's a legend. And he's just tearing it up. So potentially could have a good week against the Eagles. The Broncos, the Packers, the Indianapolis Colts, the Patriots. Patriots last couple weeks, I know last week against the Buffalo Bills didn't give up much, but the weeks prior to that, they were really struggling against the running back position. The Rams, Washington Redskins, Jets, teams that, in their fair, opportunity, they can give up points to the running back position. We saw the Jets give Jamaal Williams pretty much a good amount of points. We saw the Redskins give Derrick Henry a good amount of points, which potentially could have been way more. So these teams are all vulnerable. The teams that are not vulnerable or have been pretty consistent against the running back this season, as you can see on the bottom of my screen, the Bears, the Titans, the Ravens, the Saints, the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Texans, Cowboys, Steelers, Vikings. Yeah. It's pretty much like an eye test. Close your right eye. What letters do you see? Anyway. So as of right now, who plays against the Bears? Dalvin Cook does. Now, is that a death sentence? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think the Vikings are going to be able to compete. They're playing for their playoffs lives. So I think Dalvin Cook could figure it out here or there. The Titans, they get to play against Marlon Mack. Is that a death sentence? I don't think so. I really don't think any of these matchups are potential death sentences, except for the fact that the Ravens get to play against the Browns. And that, I'm a little worried for Nick Chubb. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it turns out, but otherwise, I think with a lot of players potentially not playing this week due to trying to keep them healthy and or trying to maintain them as they get into the playoffs. For example, the Saints, they're probably not going to play a lot of their defensive starters. There could be a potential where other running backs figure it out this week. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to the rankings page. Before I begin here, I want to talk about a couple of running backs that I'm not going to be mentioning today specifically. Number 1, Leonard Fournette. I don't think he's going to play. As you can see, literally right. How do I do this? Right there in the bottom left. Yeah. We have TJ Yeldon. I honestly don't think Leonard Fournette's going to play. Currently has the questionable tag, was limited in practice, and to be honest, they have Blake Bortles starting at quarterback this week. They play against the Texans. I understand that they're trying to force some sort of upset special, but I don't know if he's going to play. If any news comes out that he's fully practicing by Friday and they plan on playing him, then sure, I will adjust it on my Saturday or Sunday live stream, whichever I end up doing. I'll have my updated rankings for you guys. Other than that, other than Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, according to Ron Rivera, who was interviewed earlier today, he had kind of gave some hints leaning towards the idea that Christian McCaffrey is probably not going to play. Again, this is why you don't play in Week 17. Yes, they have nothing to play for, and that is why they're not going to play him, right? He is the franchise running back. He had one of the, for sure, a historical season. He broke Matt Forte's record for most receptions by a running back in a season. He, right now, is the number 1 running back in a full PPR standpoint. He's unbelievable, and he's just been tearing it apart. So he probably won't play. We know guys like Zeke probably not going to play. Maybe plays a drive, maybe plays a quarter. Kamara, Ingram, those guys probably won't end up playing. There's a potential that David Johnson doesn't play. You never know. We're going to have to just wait, stay updated. But until then, this is my rankings. So rankings are subject to change, ladies and gentlemen. All right, anyway, let's get right into it really quickly. I've been talking about these guys for 17. This is the 17th week, okay? Been talking about these guys for a while, okay? So if I'm short and I'm brief with these guys, forgive me. If you have any questions, hit me up. I know there's not many of you left playing in a Week 17 championship format as of right now. So I'm sure I can get to your questions as soon as possible. We don't have a Thursday night game, so nothing's really on a timely basis. It's not even a Saturday game. So I think we can get everything done by Sunday for sure. Either way, let's get into it, shall we? Number 1, we have Melvin Gordon of the Los Angeles Chargers. They play against the Broncos this week. Last week was kind of a buffering week for him. Kind of got himself reestablished within the offense. Played against a tough defense, too. Played against the Ravens, which was not a walk in the park. I didn't expect it to be. I had him at a ranked, I think, about 11 last Saturday afternoon before the game started. So I thought he was going to be okay. Ended up finding the end zone, but the thing that kind of separated a good Melvin Gordon from a great Melvin Gordon was the work in the passing game. We usually know that Austin Eckler gets majority of the work. This past week, didn't really see any work. Even with Austin Eckler out, Justin Jackson picked up all the passing work. Therefore, Melvin Gordon's value just kind of diminished here and there a little bit. And again, it was a tough matchup. Phillip Rivers wasn't looking good. Turning over the ball doesn't help anybody. And when the Ravens, on the other hand, want to run the ball the whole game and kill the clock, it doesn't really give the Chargers much opportunity to run the ball themselves. So either way, this coming week against the Broncos, he'll be great. He's my number 1. Number 2, Damien Williams. Like I mentioned before, they play against the Raiders. Raiders giving up the 10th most points to the running back position. Damien Williams has been a 20-point stud each of the last 2 weeks, and he continues to find the end zone, see 15-plus carries, carries and touches, total receptions a week. And to be honest, with Spencer Ware's health in question again, I think Damien Williams is a for sure play. He's a guy that honestly at this point, as of the last 2 weeks, he's winning championships. And if he's not on your roster, that's unfortunate. Perhaps you weren't high enough on your bid, or you weren't at the top of the priority list on your waivers. But either way, if you do have him, he's a must start. He's my number 2 this week. Number 3, we have Saquon Barkley. Like I mentioned earlier, the Cowboys, they've locked their spot. So I don't believe that they're going to be bringing out guys like Jaylen Smith and Van Esch. I don't think they're going to be starting, right? I think, yes, they may play a couple series, maybe play the first quarter, but there's no way that they're going to keep them in there for the entire game and risk an injury when they're in the week after. They either have to play against the Eagles, the Vikings, or the Seahawks, who are 3 formidable opponents. So I expect Saquon Barkley against a depleted defense to completely run wild on them and have himself a great staple to end his fantastic rookie season, one that we really haven't seen in a while. Very impressive. Saquon Barkley's number 3. Number 4, Chris Carson, with a little asterisk next to him. According to, as I mentioned before, maybe you skipped to this part, but I'll remind you guys if you just skipped here. Chris Carson, as of right now, according to Pete Carroll, will be playing. Okay, he came out and he said, "We're going to play. I don't believe in resting my players at this moment in time, and to be honest, I want to continue to stay in groove and continue to play as if we're playing for our playoff lives." So Chris Carson playing against the Cardinals, it's going to be an easy game, and if he does end up playing the full thing, which if it's coming from the horse's mouth, I might as well believe it. Chris Carson could have a monster week for sure. Number 5, Sony Michel, a guy that consistently gets a lot of touches, even with James White, having a rushing touchdown himself, and Rex Burkhead contributing a lot last week. A lot of this Patriots offense is predicated on the idea that they're going to run the ball, and again, run the ball even more. So as of right now, playing against the Jets defense, I expect Sony Michel, yes, to be a number 5 running back. It's a little weird, right? But that's just where we've gotten to. With all these running backs out this week, there's no Gurley, there's no Ezekiel Elliott, there's no Kamara. There's no more Phillip Lindsay because he's out. There's no more, who else is out? There's no more McCaffrey. There's no more Fournette. There's no more, who's the running back for the damn Packers that got hurt? Wow, I'm actually drawing a blank. Maybe that's a good thing. Anyway, moving on, we have Jaylen Samuels at my number 6 this week, playing against the Cincinnati Bengals, giving up the most points to the running back position. I believe as of right now, there isn't solidified evidence that James Conner is going to play. Now, I could be mistaken. He could have practiced in full today, and Andrew was blind and he didn't read it. There's a possibility, but from what I can tell, James Conner did not play today. And if in fact that's the case and he does not practice for the rest of the week, Jaylen Samuels is a great option. He is a top 6. He's probably a top 5 running back. But as of right now, I like him at 6 against Cincinnati. I expect him to play well, and I expect him to have a fantastic fantasy week. I'm just going to go ahead and do myself the favor. I'm going to really quickly look up, what is James Conner's status? All right, James Conner. Wait, he practiced today. You're kidding me. Practiced in full. Is practicing in full for week 17. Called Conner questionable and played this. Okay. Puts him on track to return after. All right. Well, Jaylen Samuels. If Jaylen Samuels. Okay, how about this? If James Conner plays, he can take Jaylen Samuels' spot. Boom. There you go. Moving on. Number 7, Derrick Henry. On a run-first offense without Mariota, I think all they can do is run the ball with Derrick Henry. And to be honest, if they end up having a couple good runs here and there, and Derrick Henry is, he is the entire offense. I expect Colts to bring the heat, and I expected them to bring the heat last week. They weren't able to do anything about it. They couldn't stop the Giants' offense. Maybe this Colts defense is more of a mirage than we think, and potentially Derrick Henry could run all over them. That's what I expect. He's my number 7 this week. Elijah McGuire, number 8, coming off of 2 fantastic performances in back-to-back weeks. That's what they wanted him to be for this Jets offense. In the preseason, he was touted as the number 1 running back here. Isaiah Crowell was going to play second fiddle. Bilal Powell was supposed to get cut. But after Elijah McGuire got hurt, both those guys had to maintain a role within this offense. And since those two are gone and Elijah McGuire is finally fully healthy, we are really seeing him flourish within this offense with Sam Darnold at quarterback. And this coming week playing against the New England Patriots, who have been struggling. I know they didn't struggle last week, but the 2 weeks prior against the Dolphins and the Steelers, they struggled against the run, and I think Elijah McGuire could find himself some success. Number 9, C.J. Anderson, playing against the 49ers. I expect him to have a good game. Now, I don't expect them to the 49ers are putting up some fights, right? They're making teams struggle. So I don't think it's going to be a complete walk in the park, but I still think he's going to have a great game. When you're filling in for Todd Gurley, yeah, you have some pretty big shoes to fill, but this offense, this scheme, really you can put any running back there because of the holes and the opportunity there and the amount of touches you get. C.J. Anderson's flourishing, and I expect him to be a top 9 running back this week, excuse me. Jamaal Williams, you're my number 10. As of right now, I'm pretty sure, I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is going to play. There's a lot of guys that are question marks right now. But he said last week it was a leadership thing in order to make him play. So as of right now, Jamaal Williams, if in fact whoever's at quarterback, doesn't really matter. I think he could have a great week, and he probably should have a good week going forward. He's my number 10. Number 11, we have Dalvin Cook. My only concern with Dalvin Cook is the matchup. Plays against the Bears. That being said, he is still a great talent. He's been playing well in the last couple weeks, and if they consistently run the ball and keep Kirk Cousins protected this coming week, there's a potential that the Vikings could be successful, and Dalvin Cook's my number 11. Number 12, we have Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals playing against the Steelers. He struggled last week. I thought he would. I knew they were going to blitz, and they were going to force Jeff Driscoll to win them the game, and obviously we saw how that settled out. So I think the Steelers will be doing some consistent things like that, bringing pressure, trying to make sure that Jeff Driscoll has to dictate the game rather than let Joe Mixon run all over people. But then again, Steelers defense against the run is not that good as of late. So Joe Mixon could have a good week. He's my number 12. Number 13, Gus Edwards. My only thing about Gus Edwards, the fact that he doesn't contribute in the passing game, and the fact that Kenneth Dixon is on this team, and that Lamar Jackson runs the ball, kind of hurts his value, right? If he doesn't find the end zone, really just ends up being a 10-point guy. Not even. I don't even think he becomes a 10-point guy. He's probably, this week against the Browns, probably like an 8-point guy. If he finds the end zone, boom, 14, perfect. But that's the only concern I have. Otherwise, he could rip off some good runs here or there and tear apart the Browns defense. But the Browns defense are much improved. So as of right now, I think Gus Edwards, he's a decent play. But he's not a fantastic play. He's got his faults, just like anybody else that we're going to be talking about after him. They all have their faults. Moving on to number 14, we have Marlon Mack. Again, Marlon Mack's been looking good. He's getting opportunities here and there. But the only issue is this week, the matchup. He plays against the Titans. The Titans are pretty good against in the running game, stopping the run, excuse me. And we know Andrew Luck and that offense, they're going to try to take advantage of Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson, try to take advantage with T.Y. Hilton and their wide receiver core, Eric Ebron, and just kill them through the passing game. Now, that could hurt Marlon Mack this week, and especially if the run doesn't start to get going early, it's going to force Andrew Luck to throw the ball, hurry and probably often throughout the entire game. The only time you'll see Marlon Mack running the ball for a touchdown is probably in the goal line scenario. And even last week, we saw them pass on the 1 yard line twice for 2 touchdowns. So Marlon Mack hurts this week because of the matchup and because if he doesn't get enough touches, it's just not going to help him. All right, moving on to 15, Nick Chubb, another guy with a tough matchup playing against the Ravens. I still think he's going to have a good week, just like Marlon Mack, just like Gus Edwards. These guys are still going to have good weeks. That's why they're in the top 15 running backs. I'm just a little bit concerned by the matchups, the opportunity, the amount of touches, the goal line carries. Are they going to end up in the goal, in that kind of a scenario? That's up to the game script on how the game ends up. If David Njoku ends up running to the 4 yard line, Nick Chubb just automatically gets a touchdown there. Boom, easy. But how is that, is that going to happen? We don't know. But as of right now, from what I can see, projection-wise, I have Nick Chubb at 15. Should have a good week, but just not an amazing week. Let's put it that way. David Johnson's my number 16, assuming he plays this week, which I'm thinking he will. The Seahawks, they gave up a good amount of rushing yards last week to Damien Williams, and I know David Johnson this last week struggled, but really they need to get him more involved in the passing game. I think they'll be able to do so, and I think he'll be a decent running back this week. He's my number 16. 17, Jordan Howard. Really, Taric Cohen all season long was great. But as they're continuing to run the ball more and more, try to dictate the offense in a way that they can keep their defense off the field for as long as possible and try to extend their offensive drives, Jordan Howard is seeing more and more touches in the last couple of weeks, like I've been mentioning. And he's finding the end zone, which is presenting a lot of value, and it's pretty much diminishing all of Taric Cohen's value unless he is scoring a lot of points via passes, receptions, receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. Jordan Howard is really the true number one as of the last couple weeks, as of the last 3-4 weeks. So he's my number 17 this week. Number 18, I have TJ Yeldon. I am assuming that Leonard Fournette will not play. He is questionable. He was limited in practice, and I'm not sure if they need to force him back in his second year, a guy that has been struggling with injuries all year long. If he's not fully healthy, they don't have to make him go. They don't have to make him play, and potentially he doesn't have to. If, in fact, he does play, he can just fill in for TJ Yeldon, just like I mentioned with Jaylen Samuels and James Conner. All right, let's get through the last couple names I wanted to go through. Payton Barber playing against the Falcons. Falcons giving up the 4th most points to the running back position. Should have himself a great week. He's my number 19. Number 20, Adrian Peterson playing against the Eagles. Eagles' defense is not great. Whether it's stopping the pass, stopping the run, they've struggled all season long. In the last couple weeks, their offense has really been carrying them in these last couple games. They dropped a good amount. I think they dropped 30 against the Rams and 38? 40? How many points did they drop this past week? Let me see here. Let's find this, shall we? Can we find it, please? Yeah, okay. Let's see how many points they dropped this last week. They dropped 30 against the Rams and 32 against the Houston Texans. That makes a big difference. That being said, I don't think the defense is completely going to be able to stop the run per se. Adrian Peterson's been playing well, and Josh Johnson's really been getting this offense going, so they have a chance to play upset special, and Adrian Peterson could end up having a good week. He's my number 20. Number 21, Taric Cohen. Only reason I have him a little bit lower than usual is because really we're not seeing as many touches from him. If he continuously is getting his touches stolen away from Jordan Howard, I don't expect him to have great 15-plus point weeks. That is really predicated on the idea that he sees a lot of targets in the passing game, gets 8 to 10 touches out of the backfield, and we're not really seeing that as of late. So as of right now, Taric Cohen's my number 21. He's just a little bit lower than usual. Number 22, Kenyan Drake plays against the Bills this week, and the Bills, they are terrible against the run. We saw Sony Michel, who was having terrible weeks back to back, come out and run for 116-plus yards this past week and a touchdown. And I think if Kenyan Drake and if Adam Gase, for the love of God, wants to give him the ball, he can prove to everyone why he is so talented and why he should honestly be the starting running back of this team. But guess what? Probably Frank Gore will be the starting running back for next season. I swear he probably will be. All right, moving on. Number 23, Royce Freeman, a guy I didn't mention yesterday, a guy I completely forgot about. I completely forgot that Phillip Lindsay completely out for the season, done. And Royce Freeman, he's going to be taking majority of the touches. I know Devontae Booker's still back there, but Freeman should probably get majority of the touches. A rookie himself, trying to earn himself a job earlier this season, kind of lost his way with an injury, and Phillip Lindsay, stepping up and playing his heart out. So hopefully Royce Freeman can figure it out, be my number 23 this week. Number 24, Jeff Wilson Jr. with Matt Breida out. He should be good. I mean, I know the 49ers, they've been competing as of late, and Jeff Wilson Jr. has seen a good amount of touches here and there, so he's not complete out of the blue kind of play this week. So against the Rams, should be decent. He's my number 24. 25, we have Doug Martin. I know he plays against the Kansas City Chiefs. They give the second most points to the running back position, but the Chiefs are way better at home. They are way better at home, and I don't know how much we can trust a guy like Doug Martin. I really think if you were to play him, he needs to be a running back, a low-end RB2, high-end RB3. That's where I like him as of right now. Pretty much a flex play if you are in need. Moving on, 26, Brian Hill of the Falcons playing against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If, in fact, Tevin Coleman is out, and that's what I'm expecting to happen, Brian Hill, again, another guy that's a flex play against a really easy matchup. If Tevin Coleman is playing, I think Tevin Coleman's a top 18 running back this week, plain and simple against that defense. Moving on, Deontay Foreman didn't look good this last week. Had himself a receiving touchdown, right? That's great. But in the running game, he had 9 carries for -1 yards. Really just was dominated by the Eagles' defensive front, and just didn't get it stringing together. This week against the Jaguars, could end up figuring it out. I expect him to do so. I expect him to get more and more touches with Lamar Miller being injured. Foreman was really a guy, even last season when Lamar Miller was getting banged up, that stepped up, and I expect him to do so again this season. Moving on to 28, Zach Zenner. Really the best running back out of that backfield since Kerryon Johnson has been out. LeGarrette Blount contributes here and there, so does Theo Riddick, but Zach Zenner is the best part of that backfield as of right now, fantasy-wise. Moving on to 29, James White. If James White doesn't end up picking up a touchdown, he's practically not much value. We didn't see him get too much this past week, and I don't think he's going to be, crazy this coming week. Again, a lot of his offensive reps are dictated on whether or not the defense can stop their offense. If they're put in third and long situations, that's where James White is most deadly. Catching the ball out of the backfield, making some plays with his legs. Yes, he had a touchdown this last week on a 25-yard run. That's a big swing of 8.5 points. If he doesn't get one of those, it will really kill his week. That's why he's my number 29. Number 30, Darren Sproles. He looked good this past week, right? 3 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. About 9 rushes for 20-something yards. Great. Looked fantastic. But if you're only catching the ball 3 times out of the backfield, can't really trust that, right? I need to see more targets. I need to see more touches out of the backfield. Really, there isn't a running game there. This past week against the Houston Texans, they struggled. Josh Adams got smothered. And, Josh Adams not on this list. Why? Because I think this coming week, Darren Sproles is going to continue to be used more and more. I know he's older. He's very much so a guy that can get injured because of his age, but I still expect them to use him. 31, we have Rod Smith. This, honestly, 31 could be Ezekiel Elliott, because Ezekiel Elliott will probably come out in the first drive and score a touchdown, and then he's done for the rest of the game. He could end up 10 points in the first drive, potentially, but if he doesn't, Rod Smith has the rest of the game against one of the weaker defenses in the NFL when it comes to stopping the run, so Rod Smith could figure it out. 32, Rashaad Penny for the Seahawks. If, in fact, Chris Carson comes out, just like I'm mentioning with Ezekiel Elliott, if he comes out and has himself a good game, they end up being up early against the Cardinals, which I expect them to do so, being up maybe 21-7 at halftime, ending up 28-7 into the third quarter. I don't think he's going to, Chris Carson's going to see much more action, and Rashaad Penny could be a good flex play this week for the rest of the game, just running out the clock. And really against that Cardinals defense, it's no longer running out the clock. It's just run, and you're going to find open lanes and potentially find yourself scoring. Moving on to number 33, LaShawn McCoy. I have to mention him because really he could potentially have a good week. I doubt it, but I have to mention him. I don't want him to be on this list. I don't think he's going to do anything. it's such a disappointing year. But it is what it is. So he's my number 33. Number 34, Dwayne Washington. This is the backup, according to what I've heard. He is the backup for Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. Okay, so let me go ahead and confirm this while we're just sitting here chilling. All right, Dwayne Washington. Wait, no, that's DeAndre Washington. Where is it? Dwayne Washington. There we go. So, yeah, he is the backup to Kamara and Mark Ingram. So, if you believe in the idea that Teddy Bridgewater and him can figure it out playing against the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers, then he's not a bad play at 34. 35, Rex Burkhead contributing within this offense. Really, I mean, the fact that there is 3 Patriots running back mentioned on this list, it's a little alarming, but still, they're all contributing at a pretty decent rate. The last running back I wanted to go over, Kenneth Dixon. I still think he's going to get some touches here and there. I know there's a couple other running backs that I could have mentioned, Theo Riddick, maybe Duke Johnson, maybe Justin Jackson, guys like that. But I think Kenneth Dixon gets more touches consistently because he runs the ball, and he'll get whatever work Ty Montgomery doesn't touch in the passing game. And that's pretty much it. A little bit of a shorter video, but then again, my throat has been bothering me. So thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comment section. If you're interested in a Sunday live stream in the morning, let me know. And I'll get that done. Also, before I leave, if you are listening to this video, actually, you know what? I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. So I'll mention in tomorrow's video. Either way, if you are listening to this video and you've already won your championship and you've played in a Week 16, but you're listening to this because you just want to hear me talk fantasy football, go down in the comment section and post your team that you won the championship with at every position. I want to see how teams broke down, how many championship teams had specific players on them. I want to break that down, try to get some stats out for you guys. Either way, thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have any questions, again, hit me down in the comment section, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow via wide receiver rankings for Week 17. So anyway, thank you, and I'll see you guys. Peace.